Sawadee-kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and I'm going to be starting off with meditation like we do each class. And then afterwards, I'm going to move into a talk on symbolism of the teachings, reminders through imagery. This is going to help you to understand the artwork, the architecture, and the symbolism that you'll see in Buddhist art and temples and things like this. Because now that you've been learning the teachings for a little bit, when you start understanding these symbols and the artwork and the architecture, when you visit temples or you see artwork, it kind of speaks to you. It kind of helps you to be able to remember the teachings, because the Buddha used symbols to be able to help his students to remember teachings. So if you're on the podcast listening to this, which is pure audio, I suggest you go actually get one of the books, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. You can download it from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can get a printed version at our temple or on Amazon. You go to buddhadailywisdom.com and you can download it, because then you'll be able to see the actual images that I'm going to be talking about in today's class. So welcome to all of you guys, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. This is a really fun class to be able to share this with you, because if you go to temples or you have the opportunity to go to temples, oftentimes when people go in or they see artwork, it's just like, oh, that's beautiful. Let me take a picture. Chi-chi. But when you understand the symbolism behind what is seen in artwork and architecture and temples, it's almost like the temple walls speak to you when you visit an actual temple. So I'm going to help you guys to understand these things after our meditation. So I'm going to start with the chanting in order to ease us into the meditation. There'll be that period of time where I'm providing guidance. Then there's going to be a period of quiet where we're just all meditating. And then we'll come out of the meditation with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class. So if you'd like to join along for the chanting, you're more than welcome to. And then, like I mentioned, I'll be back in with the guidance after the chanting. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Mahakawa Otang Mahakavanhang Apivate Sawakato Mahakawata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Mahakavato Sawaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Rasa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Iti piso mahakawa Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sammuno Sakato Rogavitu Anutero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanam Oto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect, just close the eyes And start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale in through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหะเกวาพุทธังมหะเกวันนังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหะเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนัมสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหะเกวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหะเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารนังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภาควาติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to all of you guys. Nice to see everyone in class today. Whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly, today's class is chapter 23 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This is a really fun chapter. I think all of them are fun, but this is a really fun chapter, particularly because we get to look at pictures, we get to look at images, we get to talk about the teachings of the Buddha and how these images and symbols have been used all throughout history in order to help people remember the teachings of the Buddha. During the lifetime of the Buddha, the written language wasn't available because during his lifetime, the technology to write things down didn't exist in that region of the world. So they didn't use books and pens and paper and things like this. We might not see that as technology, but 2,500 years ago, that was technology. And because they didn't have the ability to write things down, they actually used things like chanting in order to remember the teachings. This was a device to remember the teachings, but also symbolism. So if you saw a certain symbol, say on the side of someone's barn, and you knew what that symbol meant, it kind of helped you to recall the teachings and bring it to the forefront of your mind. And many of these symbols are actually still in use today. So if you understand a bit about the teachings of the Buddha, and even if you don't, I'll be able to explain to you what these symbols mean. And then if you see them at temples or you see them in artwork, or some people even have tattoos of these symbols and things like this, you might see these symbols any number of places. It'll remind you of the teachings of the Buddha. So symbolism of the teachings are helping you to remember through imagery what the teachings are. And the Buddha had various symbols that were in use during his lifetime. And as I mentioned, many of them are actually still in use today as well. So as we go in today's class, I'm going to be pausing at the end of each image and seeing if you guys have any questions about anything that I'm talking about in relationship to the teachings of the Buddha or the images themselves. You can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, and I'll be able to see that. Or if you're in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand, unmute your microphone, and then ask any and all questions that you like. And as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, if you're listening to this through pure audio on the podcast, you might decide to go get the book so that you'll actually be able to see chapter 23, where I have the actual pictures in the book. You can get it from buddhadailywisdom.com, click on free books, and then you'll be able to download the first volume, and you'll be able to see the pictures and the images that I'm using. This first image is an image that I refer to as the Na, but there's other ways to refer to this one as well. This is actually symbolizing your journey to enlightenment and what you're going to experience in your journey to enlightenment. So what this image is representing, and when you see it, it can remind you of enlightenment. But there's details here about your journey to enlightenment that if you understand the path to enlightenment, you'll see that this image is actually representing exactly what you experience. So here, it starts down here at the bottom in the middle, where there's this kind of circle where it goes in the circular direction. This is reminding you of the cycle of rebirth, that you're being reborn over and over and over and over and over and over again. Now remember, the teachings of the Buddha, there's nothing to be believed in his teachings. You can actually independently verify that this cycle of rebirth is true. You might not actually have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but as you journey on the path, you'll be able to gain that wisdom. So right now, you might be believing that you only have one life, but you don't have any evidence that you only have one life. It's just that right now you can't recall what your past lives are potentially. But as you start awakening your mind, you start purifying their mind, there's the potential that you might actually start to observe and remember your past lives. And if this is the case, it's completely normal. Not everybody will experience that, but some people will. But there's actually 17 different criteria of a way to actually verify the cycle of rebirth. And it's in volume 11, chapter 105. So if somebody would like to go see that, they're always welcome to. But it's in volume 11, chapter 105 for a reason, because it's not something you need to approach right at the beginning of your journey. So what happened in the past is in the past. What's happened in the future, what may or may not happen in the future, it's in the future. You don't actually need to verify the cycle of rebirth right now. But it is something that you will most likely get to if you continue to journey on the path to enlightenment using the resources that I share. You'll actually be able to learn the wisdom of how to independently verify this. So this cycle of rebirth here, the Buddha is reminding you through this image that you're being reborn over and over and over and over and over again. And notice how the path here is very wide and very dark, because the individual at this point in time, they don't really understand the path very well. So it's very wide and very dark. But as you start journeying on this path, the path becomes more narrow because you're starting to focus in on exactly what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. And as you're making your way forward, you're going to have missteps. You're not going to just take this upward trajectory to enlightenment, right? It's not like a linear line to enlightenment. You're going to be making forward progress, but then you're going to slip up with some wrong speech. You're going to forget some meditation. You're going to, get angry and frustrated here and there. So you're going to have some missteps. You're going to kind of walk backwards a little bit, but then you're going to come forward again, right? And then you're going to make some more missteps, and then you're going to come forward again. And then you're going to make some missteps. And each time you're making these missteps, you're gaining wisdom about what it was that you were doing and helping to purify your mind more. And that's why the path is narrowing in more and more and more, because you're cultivating wisdom and getting more and more wisdom with each one of those missteps, right? And it's not that you're only going to have 5 or 6 missteps. You're going to have much more than that, right? But nonetheless, that's what this is representing, is these missteps, and you're kind of narrowing in on the path. And then eventually, your wisdom becomes so significant that now you really narrow in on the path and you're making your way up, and now the mind is actually enlightened, right? So this is signifying a journey to enlightenment. And this is a common one that you will see being used. It's oftentimes in Buddhist artwork. You might find it on statues, or the monks, when they chant, they have this fan that they hold in front of their eyes. This is something that they do during this period of time, and it actually has sometimes this image on there. Sometimes when you see it on a statue, it'll be between the eyes, the eyebrows of the Buddha. And the reason why is because as your mind is progressing to the jhanas, which are preliminary phases that the mind goes through before you get to the first stage of enlightenment, when you get to the second jhana, there's this opening of what's called the third eye, or the inward-looking eye, the divine eye, or the inner eye. This is where you have full awareness of your entire mind. prior to the second jhana, which the jhanas are enhanced qualities of mind that you will experience on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. These enhanced qualities of mind, there's several of them, and I teach these at different times in the various programs. But when you get to the second jhana, you have what's called oneness of mind or unification of mind. Prior to the second jhana, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. Both of these are polluted in the unenlightened state, but the subconscious mind is more polluted than the conscious mind. If you've ever been standing around talking to friends and you just kind of blurted something out and you were like, where did that come from? Like, I don't think that way. Where did that come from? I don't usually say things like that. I don't think like that, right? This is your unconscious mind throwing things up into your conscious mind, and you just kind of blurt it out without even thinking about it because there's no filter there. So the conscious mind and the subconscious mind are both polluted. And in order to get to enlightenment, you need to purify this. And by the time you get to the second jhana, you're experiencing oneness of mind or unification of the mind, where you can see the entire mind. And people oftentimes refer to this as opening of the third eye, or opening of the inner eye, or the divine eye, or the inward looking eye. You become very introspective during this period of time where you're looking inward rather than looking outward and blaming everybody around you. You start really reflecting and looking inward at your own mind, doing a lot of thinking and pondering about the teachings of the Buddha. So this particular symbol representing enlightenment, and that an individual is enlightened, oftentimes they put it on a statue at the third eye, which is considered to be between the eyebrows of an individual. So you might see this in statues. Then these other two images off to the right and left, what I've done here is when I went out and I was getting these images off the internet, I just kind of Googled a few things. And as you can imagine, there's different artists with different creativity, and they're kind of creating images in different ways. There's not just one image, because that would be permanence. There's these other images that also represent enlightenment. So when I Googled this, these were the first time that I ever saw these images. But because I knew this main image and what this means, I could also understand what these images mean. And that's where it becomes really fun, is that you can see artwork, you can see images, and you already know what they mean. And it's kind of like interpreting art. If you've ever gone to art galleries and kind of looked at artwork and tried to understand what it was the artist was trying to communicate with their artwork, that's a really fun activity to do sometimes. And you can do that with Buddhist art as well. And these are artists that have depicted essentially the same thing that I was talking about here with this main image, but they're doing it in a slightly different way here. So this is the one that you will see most often and most commonly, but you might see these other ones too, and you'll know what those mean as well. So this is a symbol of enlightenment. Do you guys have any questions on this particular symbol? Feel free to put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm just looking around on our various platforms to see if we have questions. And I don't see any questions. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next symbol. This one is referred to as a Dhamma wheel. The word Dhamma is a Pali word. The original teachings of the Buddha, the largest, most complete collection we have, is in the Pali language, and it's called the Pali Canon. It's 45 volumes of books that are this thick. And the word Dhamma means teachings. That's what it translates to. But if we call this the teachings wheel, it doesn't really kind of make sense, right? So this is one of the few things where I still use the Pali word of Dhamma wheel, because it just kind of makes more sense to call it that. What this symbol is it's actually symbolizing very specific things. And if you saw this on the side of a barn, for example, and you understood the teachings of the Buddha, this would help you remember what it is that the Buddha was trying to teach you and what he described during his discourses in his classes. So this wheel here, what it's doing is it's reminding you of the cycle of rebirth, going around and around and around and around. And then these 8 individual spokes are reminding you of the eightfold path, which is the escape out of the cycle of rebirth. The ultimate goal is to get to enlightenment, where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. It's a permanent mental state that you will be experiencing long into the future. It's a permanent mental state, right? Your mind is focused, concentrated, you have clarity, deep memory, your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming, they're at ease, you don't have any bitterness and harshness and hostility in the mind anymore, you're not even experiencing a bad mood. You'll notice that all the feelings such as anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all of that has been eliminated from the mind. And it's the Eightfold Path that is the core central teaching that's going to guide you to that enlightened mental state. And when you get to enlightenment, not only is the mind peaceful and joyful, but you have escaped the cycle of rebirth. You're no longer going to come back into this world over and over and over again because you've learned the wisdom about this world that you needed in order to let go and move on and get out of here, right? So these 8 spokes are reminding you of here at 12 o'clock, this is right view. Then you've got right intention, you've got right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And for anybody who's studied the Eightfold Path in depth, you know that there's teachings behind that that's helping you to be able to guide you to enlightenment. You need to commit this teaching to memory. And if you haven't done that yet, you can always study that, really work to commit it to memory. And then you're always welcome to schedule an appointment with me, and you can almost teach it to me, and I'll kind of help to verify where you need help or where you're actually understanding the teachings. So this Eightfold Path is the path that's going to guide you to this peaceful and joyful mental state and escape out of the cycle of rebirth. Here on this one side, it's just an image that could be used anywhere. Over here, you see it as a temple marker. If you go to a main temple complex, there's going to be one building. Here in Thai, we call it a sala. That's the main hall. But there's ultimately multiple buildings around the whole temple complex, but there's one building called a sala. And there will be markers in all 8 directions of the compass, where before the land was built and they built this main hall, they would have dropped these large concrete balls down into the ground to mark out the 8 directions of the compass. And they would have put a 9th one down in the middle of the floor, all the way down in the ground. And this marks out the main hall. So if you're coming to a brand new temple that you've never been to before, and you know there's some event going on, you would look for the main hall and you would see the 8 directions of the compass marked out with these temple markers. Here, this particular temple marker is using the Dhamma wheel, but every temple uses different markers. I've never seen 2 temples that are exactly the same. So they're using the Dhamma wheel here on this temple marker. And when you go to a temple here in Thailand, they will typically set the image of the Buddha in the west, looking towards the east. And that's what you'll notice when you go to all these temples, that's the way they'll set them up, is that the Buddha statue will be sitting physically on the west end of the building, looking out through the door, typically to the east. He's looking to the east, right? Here behind me, I'm doing this tour where I've got a bunch of students with me. I'm walking them through a forest temple. Here in the back, you see a couple of statues, and you see a Dhamma wheel behind the head of the Buddha, the statue there. This is a common place that you'll see this either in artwork or statues here like this, that they'll tend to put the Dhamma wheel behind the head of a Buddha. Because when a Buddha awakens to enlightenment, this is the very best thing that could happen for the world, like having a Buddha physically in the world and alive to be able to actually share the teachings that it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. This is like a step forward for civilization. This is like humanity entering into a new era, because an individual who's a Buddha, they would have got to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides. They would be dedicating the rest of their life to sharing their independently discovered teachings with countless people, and countless people will get to enlightenment during that person's lifetime. Then they will preserve their teachings in such a way that countless more people will get to enlightenment after their death. So those are the 3 criteria of what make a Buddha, and they're very rare in the world. The last one that the world is currently aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. Well, when a Buddha awakens to enlightenment, this Dhamma wheel is said to be on their head, kind of figuratively, not physically, but figuratively. And when they awaken, they reach up with their right hand and they turn this Dhamma wheel in the counterclockwise direction. And this is symbolizing humanity entering into a new era, or humanity taking a big step forward. Because what a Buddha is doing is they're putting down lights along the path to enlightenment and helping as many people as possible to understand what that path is. Essentially, they're illuminating the path to enlightenment. So this Dhamma wheel is typically put behind the head of a Buddha in artwork and different things like this. So you might see that. If you are traveling around Buddhist communities, you're going to see many, many, many statues of the Buddha. And it's important to note that the Buddha never mentioned to anyone that they should create statues of him. That's not something that he taught, but people chose to actually do that. But the statues that you see, they don't actually represent what he looks like, because the people who started making statues of him, they started doing that about 200 or 300 years after his death. And none of those people actually lived during the lifetime of the Buddha. The people that were practicing Buddhist teachings during that time came in contact with the Greek people. And the Greek people were making statues of their gods. And when the people that were practicing the teachings of the Buddha came in contact with this statue making, and they learned how to do statue making from the Greek people, they were thinking, who do we have to make a statue out of? The Buddha, let's make a statue of him. So people started making statues of him. And most of the statues you see, they look very ornate. They look very royal. There's this crown on top of his head. He didn't look like this during his lifetime. This image that I use up here, where you can see he looks very human, this was actually commissioned here in Thailand. A Thai artist did this artwork based on the original teachings. In the original teachings, you can see the Buddha describing himself and what he looked like. And he was from Nepal, what we refer to as Nepal. He taught in what we refer to as Northeast India. And you can see that this image looks very much like an individual from that region of the world. He was a prince destined to become a king, but he stepped down from that and walked away from it. But the people who started making statues of him made him look very royal, right? They put this crown on his head. Some of the statues look very ornate. He just wore simple robes, just rag robes. In fact, during his lifetime, there was a student who offered him a very elaborate, fancy fabric, and he accepted it because he teaches to accept what is given, accepting people's generosity. But he turned and he gave it to one of his students, and he asked them to rip it up into pieces and sew it back together so that they could make a robe out of it, because he wasn't interested in walking around looking flamboyant and flashy. He just used very simple clothing as a way to walk around. And this is what you see over here in this artwork. And this is a depiction of what the Buddha looked like during his lifetime. So you're going to see many, many statues, and they're all very beautiful artwork, and they typically will represent a time frame during the lifetime of the Buddha. If you understand his life story, you can look at a statue and you know what it's representing. And when I take students around on tours, we interact and observe many different statues, and I explain to them what each individual statue is and what it's representing. And I do that once a month here in Chiang Mai, and I take students around to be able to view different temples. And this is kind of like a fun thing here in Thailand. It's almost like a scavenger hunt, where when they go on holiday, they go into a temple and they kind of look around. So if you're from Chiang Mai, the city that I'm living in the north, and say you went down to the south to like Phuket as a family holiday, at some point of your holiday, you're probably going to go visit some temples and you're going to look around. And the temple walls kind of speak to you. If you understand the teachings of the Buddha, when you look at the statues, it kind of speaks to you. So where we might go to Disney World or Legoland or things like that, Thai people go into these temples and they check out these temples, and it helps them to remember the teachings. It's kind of part of their visit to a new area. It's kind of like a living library, right? It's kind of like a scavenger hunt, trying to go around and see what you can see at the temple and what it represents and what it means based on the teachings of the Buddha. So let me know what questions you guys have here about anything that I've been talking about. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Ted or Kristen have a question. Go ahead, guys.
Hi, thank you, Teacher David. My question was, why does the Buddha sit to the west and look out to the east?
Yeah, so the Buddha talked during his lifetime that there would be a new Buddha that would come into the world 2,500 years after his death, and they would restore the teachings back into the world in a way that the entire world would be able to understand his teachings. And the date of that is 2017, because he died in 483 BC. but the date of 2,500 years after his death is the year 2017. And you shouldn't expect that this new Buddha is going to get on the 5 o'clock news and tell everybody, okay, I'm a Buddha, come learn from me, because everybody would know, like, no, that's not a Buddha, because, this person is obviously got ego to go out and say these kinds of things. But for someone who's able to get to enlightenment by themselves without the help of any teachers or any guides, they would be able to actually go out into the world and be able to teach without other people knowing that they're an actual Buddha. And this is actually beneficial for an individual to be a Buddha and actually people not know that they're a Buddha. Because then one of the powers that a Buddha has is they can observe the quality of somebody's mind, and they can then offer that person teachings to be able to help them to improve the condition of their mind. But they would only do that if that person was soliciting guidance from them. They wouldn't just kind of be sitting at a restaurant and 3 tables over, like, by the way, you're using wrong speech over there, right? Like, you wouldn't do something like that. But one of the things that a Buddha can do is observe the quality of a individual's mind, a student's mind, and then provide teachings that would help them to improve that. So this new Buddha that's referred to as Maitreya Buddha, which means loving kindness, there's people who say that this Buddha is going to come from the West and they're going to reside in the East. So this is why it's thought that the statues are sitting in the West and looking towards the East, because of this Maitreya Buddha that people talk about.
David, could I ask a question? In a lot of the temples we went to, including, I believe, yours, I can't remember, it's a year ago now, but there's numerous Buddhas up in front. There might be 10, there might be 20, there's an emerald Buddha, there's and it just, I didn't know what to think of it. Outside of being beautiful, I didn't know if there was reason or purpose behind it.
Yeah, the Thai people think the more of something you have, the more powerful it is. So one of the misunderstandings that exist here in Thailand and other parts of the world too, is they think that these statues are the actual Buddha. They think like the spirit of the Buddha is inside these statues. And when you interact with a statue, it's like the Buddha is sitting right there in front of you. This isn't actually true, but this is what oftentimes people think. So they think the more statues that they have up there, the more powerful it is. I don't know if you guys know that here in Chiang Mai, they just set a Guinness World Book of Records, which is like perfect for Thai society, because they set a Guinness World Book of Records of the most dancers doing this Thai dance, this long fingernail dance. They had over 10,000 dancers at one time all throughout the city doing the exact same dance all throughout the city. And they set this new record. It was just, like a week or so ago. So there was like over 10,000 dancers all dressed exactly the same all over the city, doing this exact same dance. So they think the more of something you have, the more powerful it is. So they literally think that the Buddha is sitting there in all of these statues, which is 100% not the truth. The Buddha did not teach to make statues of him. He did not teach that his spirit is in these statues. There's nothing like that, but you'll find people that will feed the statues. They will leave offerings for the statues. They will pray to the statues. They will talk to the statues. They'll do all these different things. And it's really cute when you see these kinds of things, but it's unfortunate because they don't understand that this isn't true and that there's actual teachings that the Buddha left that will actually guide you to enlightenment. And having, 30 Buddhas at one temple doesn't change anything about your ability to get to enlightenment. What's going to help someone get to enlightenment is the teachings and cultivation of wisdom. So I've been to over 200 temples in my life, and I've only ever been to one that shares the original teachings of the Buddha. And this particular temple practices the teaching so closely, they actually don't even have a statue of the Buddha at the entire temple. And that's why if you come to the classroom where I teach, I don't have a statue of the Buddha. I have a big picture, a big portrait of him, so people can see what he looked like, because I like to humanize a Buddha of what he looked like. But there's no statues in the classroom where I teach. But the actual temple, the main building, which I'm not responsible for, yeah, they have 15, 20, 30 different Buddhas there, because they think the more of something you have, the more powerful it is. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. So I'm going to move on to the next one, which is a lotus flower. This is another symbol of enlightenment, and it symbolizes your journey to enlightenment. The way a lotus flower grows is it has these roots that are deep down into the murky earth, and then it grows this strong stalk, raising through the murky water, and then it rises up over the murky water, and then it blooms into a lotus flower. And this is essentially a symbol for your journey to enlightenment. That the mind is holding on to the world, holding on to the earth, right? The mind is holding on to so many things, holding on to possessions and money and relationships, and just holding on and holding on and holding on. And then what you need to do in order to overcome this is you need to grow this strong practice. That's the stalk. Through wisdom and cultivation of wisdom, you grow this strong stalk. And what you're doing is you're rising through the murkiness of the world, because the world is full of killing and stealing and sexual misconduct and lying and intoxicants and so many other unwise and unwholesome things. And you need to rise above that, rise through that murkiness of the world. And then when you do, you will bloom into a lotus flower. The mind will experience enlightenment. It's not a sudden thing. It's a gradual thing. Just like a plant gradually grows, your mind will gradually evolve and gradually grow as well. So this bloomed lotus flower is representing enlightenment. So oftentimes what you'll see is that they'll put this near a statue of the Buddha. They'll even carve an open bloom lotus flower under the Buddha, or you'll see artwork where they'll put a big lotus flower underneath of the Buddha and he's sitting on this lotus flower, symbolizing enlightenment. But of course, because of impermanence, not all lotus flowers bloom, right? Some kind of break the surface of the water, like you see this one here, but it hasn't bloomed yet. Or these up here, it hasn't bloomed, right? It's just a bud that's there. And that's symbolizing your potential to get to enlightenment. So when you see an open lotus flower, this is symbolizing enlightenment. But when you see a closed lotus flower, this is symbolizing your potential to get to enlightenment. And this is what it reminds you of. So oftentimes you see closed lotus flowers when you go around in temples and stuff like this. And it's reminding you like, hey, you have the potential to get to enlightenment. This is something that you can achieve. So let me know if you guys have questions here about the lotus flowers. Remember, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or in Zoom. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions here. So this one is one that I included because I've never had seen it before until I started Googling different images online. But because I understood some of the basics of imagery related to Buddhist art, I understood what the artist was trying to communicate. And I included it here so that you guys can understand that if you don't understand some of the basic symbolism with Buddhist artwork, you could actually go and see Buddhist artwork either online or in a book or at an art gallery, and you might be able to decipher some of these. And that's where the real fun is in doing this, is if you have a basic understanding of these things, you can actually see what the artist is communicating. So you guys can probably already understand what this is, even though I haven't taught it to you, right? Because I explained to you what this symbol is here. You know that that's a symbol of enlightenment and your journey to enlightenment. And you understand what the lotus flower is, a bloomed lotus flower, and you understand that that's a symbol of enlightenment. So we can know that the artist here was depicting in their own way, in their own creative way, which artists are very creative, they're depicting enlightenment, right? In the journey to enlightenment. Okay, so you can see different artwork in different places and you can figure these things out. Here's some statues that you'll see at the base of stairs when you go visit temples. I'll explain to you guys the story of why this big snake is there at the base of the stairs. And then I'm going to kind of extrapolate lessons for you and help you to be able to understand how this story is going to help you in your journey to enlightenment. This story that I'm going to share with you, I don't know that it's true, but I don't know that it's false either, because I wasn't there when this story was to have taken place. It seems pretty outlandish to me, but it is in the original teachings of the Buddha in the Pali Canon. It was written there. And I don't know whether that truly did happen or whether it was added sometime later or not. But nonetheless, I'll tell you this story and just understand, I don't know if it's true or false, but I'll tell you the story, but then I'm going to show you the lessons that you can extrapolate out of it to be able to help you on your journey. So there's a story that there's this large snake during the lifetime of the Buddha that was really close to being reborn into the human world, and it could transition itself to look like a human being. And what it would do is it would transition itself to look like a monk, an ordained practitioner. And this snake would go into the discourses where the Buddha was speaking, looking like a monk. It would have a shaved head, it would have a robe on, and it would go into the discourses and it would listen to the Buddha sharing his teachings. And the Buddha would teach sometimes for very long periods of time. And people would oftentimes fall asleep. You might consider that to be disrespectful. I don't think of it that way because I understand that the mind is working really hard. And oftentimes people will get very drowsy and very sleepy, and they might fall asleep in the class or something like this. And as people would fall asleep, the Buddha would just sit there patiently, waiting for everybody to sleep and wake up. And then when they would wake up, he would then start teaching again. Well, at one point, everybody fell asleep. And when they fell asleep, this snake that was looking like a ordained practitioner, like a monk, it transitioned to look back like a snake, because while it was sleeping, it kind of lost its thoughts, it lost its consciousness, and it was kind of moving back to look like a snake. And then over time, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of practitioners, the ordained practitioners started waking up and they saw this snake and they got really scared and they went and got the Buddha. And they brought the Buddha over to where the snake is, because an enlightened being doesn't have any fear. These ordained practitioners who weren't enlightened yet, they had fear. But they went and got the Buddha, and he came over and he saw the snake, and the snake wakes up and he says to the snake, like, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm here to learn your teachings. I would like to get to enlightenment. And the Buddha's like, silly snake, you can't get to enlightenment. You're in the animal realm. It's not until you get to the human realm or the heavenly realm that you can actually get to enlightenment. And the snake's like, no, I really want to get to enlightenment. I want to do this and I want to get to enlightenment. And the Buddha's like, yes, I understand, but you're not in the human realm, so you're not going to be able to get to enlightenment in this lifetime. But in your next life, which it looks like you're very close to being reborn in the human world, you could study my teachings then, and you'll be able to actually get to enlightenment. And the snake, and the Buddha were talking, and the Buddha asked the snake to go outside because these individuals who were trying to get to enlightenment, this fear kept coming up in their mind, and they weren't able to focus to be able to learn and understand the teachings. So when the Buddha asked this snake to go outside and go somewhere else, the snake kind of reluctantly agreed. And he said, okay, if you're not going to let me learn your teachings, then I'm going to go outside and I'm going to stand guard. And if anybody comes in to learn your teachings that has ill will towards your teachings, I'm not going to allow them to pass by. It's kind of like a security guard, right? And the Buddha, of course, is like, okay, up to you, whatever you would like to do, see you later kind of thing. So again, I don't know that this story is true, but I don't know it's false either. Scientists tell us that 99% of all animals that once existed no longer exist. The animals that we see is only 1% of the animals that have been in existence over time. So I've never seen a snake that can transition itself to look like a human being. But that doesn't mean there isn't one out there that has happened at some point. I just don't know that to be true. It sounds a little bit outlandish to me. But nonetheless, there's some stories and some lessons learned that you can extrapolate here that's going to help you to be able to understand the path to enlightenment. The first one is when you pass by this snake, it's helping to remind you, thank goodness you're human. You are human. You are in the human world. Don't allow this life to go to waste. Don't be complacent. Learn and practice the teachings so that you can make your way to enlightenment. This is the first thing that it reminds you of. The second thing that it reminds you of is that an enlightened being doesn't have any fear. That when they went and got the Buddha and the Buddha came, the Buddha knew through the natural law of karma that he wasn't causing any harm to this snake, so no harm was going to come to him. Right? So he was completely at ease and there was no fear in his mind. And then the third thing that it can remind you of is not to have ill will towards the teachings of the Buddha. Having ill will towards the teachings of the Buddha would be to change his teachings. If you tried to change the teachings of a Buddha, this is causing harm to you and to countless people. Because what a Buddha does is they spend their life putting the lights along the side of the path so more and more people can understand what it takes to be able to get to enlightenment. If somebody came along and changed the teachings of the Buddha, it's like knocking over the lights. And now it makes it hard for everybody to be able to get to enlightenment. So it would be for your harm, having changed the teachings, it won't allow you to get to enlightenment. And it'll be for the harm of many people who ever get exposed to what it is that you've changed. So when you go to the temple, it's important to put yourself in learning mode, where you're asking questions, you're seeking information, you're seeking understanding. You're not there to teach anybody. You're not there to tell anybody anything about what you know about the teachings unless they ask you, right? You're there to learn and grow and develop. A temple is like the womb of a woman. The womb of a woman is the very best place to learn and grow and develop into a human being. An egg and a sperm comes together and it grows inside the womb of a woman. It's the perfect environment for this being to be nurtured and grow into an actual human being. So the temple is kind of the same thing, that it's like the womb of a woman. It's a place to learn and grow and develop. It's a learning center. It's a cultural center. And you can enter and exit out of that womb as much as you like in order to learn and grow and develop. But you're not coming to the temple to be able to teach other people or criticize other people or tell people what they should or shouldn't be doing or judging other people. You're there for your own learning and your own growth and your own development. And this particular statue can help remind you of those things. So it can remind you, thank goodness you're human, and don't be complacent. Don't allow this life to go to waste. That an enlightened being doesn't have any fear. By the time you get to enlightenment, you will need to have eliminated all your fear. And then the third one is to not have ill will towards the teachings of the Buddha. Don't be interested in changing them, but instead learn what the teachings are and then learn and practice them. And that's what's going to lead to your enlightenment. So in the pictures here, you see me kind of on tour with some students here and kind of guiding them through the temple. This one on the right here, my right, and the way you're looking at it on the right, this is a temple called Wat Doi Suthep. It has 306 steps that goes up to the top, and students can take the steps, or you can take a cable car up to the top. I used to take the steps up, but I used to do this trip every single week on Friday. So now I take the cable car. But I've been doing a little exercise recently, so I might start taking the steps a little bit so that you could actually go up these steps if you like. And then some of these other ones are other things. This is also Wat Doi Suthep as well. This temple back here, this is Wat Umong. This is a forest temple that I take students through. That's here in Chiang Mai as well. So let me know what questions you guys have here about this particular image, which is the statue of this serpent king, or we refer to in English as a naga. This is some ways that you'll hear people refer to it. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions. Okay, so now we've got one last one, and then this is where we'll end class and open up to whatever questions you guys have. This is a tree that the Buddha contemplated at for 7 weeks before he decided sharing his teachings. From the age of 29 to 35, he spends those 6 years training his mind and getting to enlightenment. And he knows he's gotten to enlightenment because his mind is peaceful and joyful. There's no more discontentedness whatsoever. His mind is fully awake. He's fully, perfectly enlightened. Prior to that, he was actually learning with some other teachers that were teaching him to hang himself upside down from trees, lay on beds of nails, starve himself, pierce his body with metal implements. The thought was that if you could cause physical pain to the body and the mind could overcome that pain, that you would get to enlightenment. But that's what the Buddha realized was not the truth, that it did not lead to enlightenment. And after 2 years of doing that stuff, he ultimately goes out on his own and figures out how to get to enlightenment on his own in the next 4 years. And when he does get to enlightenment over those 6-year period, he realizes ultimately when he's gotten to enlightenment that his teachings are radically different than anything that anybody else is sharing. And he wasn't quite sure whether the world was ready to understand his teachings or not. So he spent 7 weeks at this tree contemplating whether or not he should actually share his teachings, right? So he took his time to really decide what he would like to do. Would he like to go back to the royal palace, or would he like to go share his teachings? So during the lifetime of the Buddha, people asked him about this tree, and he said that, you could consider this to be the place where he actually got to enlightenment, even though he got to enlightenment over a 6-year period through gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. This tree is typically associated with the Buddha's enlightenment. And this is the same tree, and it's in Northeast India, and this particular tree is where he hung out. And it's the same exact tree from 2,500 years ago. In fact, this year, towards the end of the year, we're going to be taking a Buddhist tour and retreat. I'm going to be taking students around to the various sites of the lifetime of the Buddha. And if you'd like to go, you're welcome to see the details on our website. that you can go on this tour with us to India and Nepal and see all the different sites of the life of the Buddha. And I'm going to be sharing teachings and doing it as a retreat as we go to each one of these sites. So this is one of the sites that we're going to visit. So this particular tree, in English, we call it a Bodhi tree, but there's other names for it too, which I have in the book. The leaf of this tree is here. The shape of this leaf of the tree is also a symbol of enlightenment. You will oftentimes see this particular leaf depicted in Buddhist artwork and various things. The temple where I teach, they actually have one of these trees in the very front of the temple. And if you look down on the ground, when you come into the temple, you're going to see a lot of these leaves like all over the place as a symbol of enlightenment. And what some people do is if you go to this place, they will have little saplings from this tree and you can take it home with you and you can plant it. And then it's kind of like a child of this particular tree. So I don't know that the tree where I teach is of that nature, but it is the exact same type of tree that this is considered a Bodhi tree. So it's a symbol of enlightenment, and you'll see it in various Buddhist artwork and in temples and things like that. So let me know if you guys have any questions on this particular image. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is I'm just going to end by thanking all of you guys for joining for class. Thank you for being interested in learning the teachings of the Buddha. We've got about another month worth of teaching in the group learning program, and then we're going to be starting from the very beginning on June 1st. That's a Sunday, where we're going to be starting from the very beginning of the group learning program, a 7-month program. So if you or other people that you know would like to join in for the program, they're more than welcome to. They can join at any time, but it's always nice to join at the beginning. But even now, they could start learning if they would like to learn. They can see the website for information on the group learning program. Next week, I'm going to be in chapter 24, which is titled Misunderstandings of the Teachings. Now that you've learned the teachings throughout the entire program, I'm going to start talking about the misunderstandings that you're going to see in the world. And even if you've just recently joined the group learning program, these misunderstandings are going to help you because you're going to see a lot of these things in the world being done, and you'll understand how they're misunderstandings. And I will teach you, based on the original words of the Buddha, what these misunderstandings are, so that when you see them, it doesn't lead you astray. Because over time, 2,500 years of history, the teachings have been changed to a certain degree, but it's not the actual teachings of the Buddha, these misunderstandings. So by you understanding what are the misunderstandings, you won't be misled into thinking that this particular thing is part of the teachings of the Buddha. Like, for example, statues and things like this. So I'm going to be sharing that with you next week on Sunday. And then, of course, on Wednesday, I share a guided meditation with you guys, and then I open up to any and all questions that you have. So you're always welcome to join that as well. So again, thank you all for joining. And if there's anything that I can do for you, feel free to reach out through Facebook group. You can ask questions there. You can ask questions through sending me a private message. You can schedule personal guidance sessions, or you can reach out in a class and just ask questions during the class. So these are the 4 ways that you can ask questions: is posting in our Facebook group. You can ask questions in class. You can send a private message or schedule personal guidance, and I'll be pleased to help you guys. So whatever you decide to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. Perhaps I'll see you next time. Take care. Sawadee ka. Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.